Everyone, please rise. Welcome to our meeting this evening. We'll be led by Alderman Joe DeLucia. I'm sorry, Stacy Gould for the prayer.
Almighty God, we ask for your blessing upon the members of this council as we assemble here in this chamber to conduct the ongoing business of our city. With your guidance, we will strive to ensure that all our decisions are for the common good, and your inspiration will instill respect, compassion, and thoughtfulness in all our deliberations. Give us the strength and wisdom to lead by example as the people's representatives, and that peace and harmony will mark all our proceedings and keep us faithful to the trust placed in us by the citizens of your community. Amen.
Alderman DeLucia, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd ask for a motion, please, to adoption of the minutes of March 5th and 19th, 2018. Alderwoman Stacy Gould, is there a second, please? President Pro Tem Nash, is there discussion, questions, or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous, 7-0.
Actually, I didn't raise my hand, but that's
Please.
Petition and communication. Communication from the School Building Committee, Kelly Middle School, Chairman, requesting the committee be dissolved.
We have a motion to receive this, please. Alderwoman Stacy Gould, is there a second? Alderman DeLucia. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous.
City Manager's proposed budget fiscal year 2018-2019.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. It gives me quite an honor again to present the manager's proposed budget for 2018-2019. Now, normally, as you probably know, I get up and I have a lot of nervous energy and I walk around and all that, but because of a little knee surgery, I'm kind of going to sit tonight, so it's not as animated as it normally would be. So you'll have to just excuse my back, audience. I apologize in advance for that. I still can't get used to that we're in the 2018 and the 20th century 18 now. I'm still in the 20th century rather than the 21st in some ways. When we set the budget up, the priorities were fourfold. The first would be that we try to minimize the impact on taxpayers while maintaining our services, or if we have to minimize or reduce service, to minimize the reduction. Wherever possible, we're trying to collaborate and share resources among departments. In fact, tonight there is a proposed bond issue on the agenda later on that actually puts one of those collaborations forward. Of course, we want to try to maintain the city's infrastructure. And 4, we want to try to provide for some increase in education funding as a goal. First, let's look at the revenue factors that are contained in this budget. We have state grants, grant list growth, and other revenues. State grants. Now, this is cautiously optimistic. We're hoping that the education and non-education formula grants are and remain essentially flat. Last year, as you know, the budget was not approved by the legislature until October, and there were many, many changes to the budget between when we, as a city, passed our budget and then the final budget, which was enacted in October. The second item in state grants is that we saw a decrease in motor vehicle grants because the legislature has increased the motor vehicle cap up to 45 mils. Last year it was 39. So if you're anything above the 39, you got reimbursed from the state. Now it's at 45. So there's less reimbursement from the state. Third, in grants, we have a one-time $1 million boost for school construction reimbursement. This was secured by Senator Olson during discussions on Kelly Middle School renovation, and the formula is the percentage reimbursement is slightly higher than previous years and should result in about $1 million in savings compared to what the city has bonded for this project, and that is incorporated into this year's budget. Grant list growth. Some good news here. We've had a $23 million or 1.3% increase to the grant list to now be $1,800,000,000 approximately. This translates into about $900,000 of additional revenue. It's tax revenue, but it's revenue that offsets taxes. We're in the process of doing grant list revaluation. At this point, that is being done by Vision Appraisal with a completion date at 10/1/2018. They are well along in it. You might have been visited by some of the staff members from Vision as they do their field work. Just getting back to the grant list for a second, there could be adjustments in the grant list that the BAA will conduct hearings in April, which could have some impact on the collectibles. So that's not a final number until after the appeal process is completed at the end of April. Other revenues. We have, again, the 10% share of NPU revenues. That is approximately the same as last year. The actual revenue drops by about $13,000 to $8,475,000. So it's flat from last year to this year. Interest, we are proposing that our interest income is rising, and that's two factors. One is interest rates are slowly rising to an extent, and we invest all our idle funds in a very aggressive manner to get as much revenue as we can. I want to thank the treasurer, who does a terrific job of managing those funds and getting the most aggressive rate of return that we can get on that. Finally, we have license permits and other fees. Those revenues, there's some up and downs depending on which department, but generally we propose that they will be similar from last fiscal year. expenditure factors. Two major expenditure factors. One is the pension contribution, and one is the health insurance payment. First, the pension contribution. As you might know, in 2013, 15, and 17, we had actuarial evaluations in which we reviewed and revised our assumptions. These revisions of the assumptions make our pension fund a more accurate projection, but actually lower somewhat the rate of returns in different areas. First of all, we have lowered the assumed rate of return. That's the rate of return over the life of the pension fund. It used to be projected at 8.25%. The pension fund now recognizes a 7.5% rate of return. That's only 0.75%, but if you're amortizing that over 30 years with millions of dollars of investments, that's significant. Why is that important? Well, if you assume a higher rate and you don't receive that rate, you're going to end up paying more in the pension fund and having to catch up. So having the most accurate rate of return is very important. Secondly, we've shortened the amortization schedule from 30 years to 20 years. This is a recommendation of financial authorities. Also, it is good business. It will mean that we pay off the pension amortization much quicker than having it over 30 years, so that's a positive thing. Finally, we have to put in experience for salary increases, retirement rates, mortality, and termination, and these things change from year to year. I do want to thank the firefighters and the pension coalition made up of 10 unions who have agreed to reductions in various pension benefits, which has slowed the rate of increase in our pension plan. And when we get to some of the other projections, we'll see where we are. We're currently in arbitration with the police department, so we don't have a final number on that. I'm hoping that they will follow suit with some of the other unions, but that time will tell on that. 660,000 of the 790,000 increase in pension contributions is in the general fund. The remainder is in the CCD. What's important is that we're in our phase-in of 100% payment of the pension plan. Our contribution now is being phased in at 50% a year increase. We're in the last year or two of that. Once that is eliminated, then we would eliminate that extra 790,000 in the pension increase. So that's significant in the future. Pension contributions will start leveling off in 2019 and 2020. So it's right around the corner. Here's some good news. Health insurance. We have approximately a $330,000 decrease for fiscal year 18 and 19. That really stems the tide of annual increases that have bedeviled the general fund for a number of years. Part of that is some luck. I will say that it's not all skill. We're self-funded, and we pay on a claims-made basis, which means that each claim that's incurred, we pay. Some years we have more illnesses at the city. Some years we have less. This year we have less, and you really can't explain it other than the randomness of people getting ill and so forth. Well, we did a couple of aggressive things. We did a dependent eligibility verification, which makes sure that all dependents are, that have to be on the plan are eligible. And we have an ability to reduce the amount of dependents on that if they weren't eligible. Second, and probably the most important, is that we're phasing in what we call a high deductible health plan, or an HSA, into our medical insurance portfolio. All the contracts that we have negotiated successfully at this point have the HSA in there, and any contract that doesn't have it, we're proposing to have that. That's one of the major reasons why there has been a reduction. Also, the Finance Department has a new employee benefits broker. This broker has been very successful in negotiating lower administrative costs with our carrier, which is Anthem. So that $330 does offset the pension costs of $790, at least about half of the increase. Strategies for developing the budget. There really are 4 areas that sum up trying to minimize the impact on taxpayers. Again, they are sharing resources and other initiatives, staff reorganization where possible, maintaining infrastructure, increasing education funding, and all leading up to hopefully minimizing the impact on taxpayers. Sharing resources and other initiatives. One of the major initiatives, in fact, what we'll be discussing, actually we'll be discussing it, but it will be introduced tonight at the council meeting, is a bond proposal to purchase administrative software that will have the city and the Norwich Public Schools on the same financial system. Then we would have interchangeability in the future of personnel, be able to share data, all initiatives that could save money in the long run. We project that over the life of the bond issue, this would save an additional $400,000 over paying back the bond issue. So it's about $1 million rate of return. $675 is the offset, and then $400 would be the some of the savings. We have some initiatives. They are in the mayor and council's budget. I really will save this for the mayor to discuss in more detail when we talk about the mayor and council budget, but just briefly, this budget contains an additional $50,000 to bring the NCDC back to its $150,000 funding level. There's a proposal to start contributing again to the Sachem Fund. The city stopped contributing to the fund as of 2013, and this proposal would put $100,000 back in the fund. At this point, we have no commitments from the Mohegan Nation, but we're hopeful that if the city takes the initiative, that the Mohegan tribe will also put a matching grant of $100,000. That's what it used to be. It used to be $100,000 city and $100,000 from the Mohegan tribe. We've added $50,000 for multicultural development programs. That is for development of a matching program where we match 50% on a $100,000 grant from Chelsea Groton Bank. So our $50,000 is leveraged into $100,000. And finally, we propose adding $50,000 for marketing and branding activities. And again, the mayor will talk more about that during the mayor council budget. some staff reorganizations. I'm proposing to restore the assessor clerk in the budget. It's been proposed the last 2 years and not been budgeted with the amount of staff work and the revaluation, which part of it we do in-house, saving quite a bit of money. I think it's important that we fill this position. We would increase the Human Services Employment Case Manager to full-time. 60% of this position is a grant. 40% would be working on the Working Cities Initiative. As you recall, we applied for a competitive grant on working cities. We did not receive that, but the city did such a good job on the application that United Way felt that it should be funded, and it will be funded to the tune of about $100,000 a year, so that will offset the cost of that, and this person will work on developing key regional industries and residents to support those industries and for employment purposes. We also want to take the recreation director to full-time from part-time. Subtractions. We would eliminate one recreation maintainer. This is a vacant position. This would offset the increase in the director's full-time, so we have an offset there. We would eliminate one administrative position in planning and neighborhood services. We have not determined at this point which position that would be, and we're still working on that. So it's a net decrease of 0.2 full-time equivalents. Infrastructure. This year we're budgeting the the city charter mandated number of $2.48 million. Much of it goes to roads and other infrastructure improvements, police cruisers, which we replace part of the fleet on a yearly basis because the high mileage that each car puts on each year. Police and fire safety equipment replacements. This is not to be confused with the apparatus acquisition. That's a separate bond issue, but this is for things like replacement of hoses, other jackets, bunker wear, things like that. Finally, we have investments in energy efficiency projects for lighting, HVAC, and so on. In this, we also, and it's not listed here, there's a proposal tonight of a small bond issue of $800,000 to fund Dodd Stadium improvements. Most of the money would go towards installation of new lighting for the field. The field lighting does not meet the Major League standards for lighting, and if we want to continue having a team there, we need to have those standards upgraded. Also, we would improve on the HVAC there. We actually got to replace it. There pretty much is no heating and air conditioning in the building. And finally, they would extend the netting, safety netting. You might notice that there's safety netting behind home plate. This would extend it out on the baselines a little bit to provide protection for spectators watching a baseball game. You see a lot of this has been expanded at the Major League level, and it's become quite an issue over the last few years. Board of Education funding. The Board of Education requested a 9.03 increase, which would have brought their budget up to $83 million. I proposed a budget to include a 2% increase to $77.7 million, understanding that this is short of what their request is. And I was asked today by the press, well, how did you come up with the 2%? Well, I took the 2%, put it into all the other expenditures that we have looked at our proposed tax rate and felt that this was a reasonable number for the budget and what the council could consider. Now, obviously, the council can consider something either higher or lower than that. Taxpayer impact. Basically, the mill rate changes. The general fund would increase by 1.54 mils, or approximately 3.8%. TCD would go up 30.32 mils, and CCD would go up 1.8 mils. Again, the cap on motor vehicle tax increases from 39 to 45 limits what our revenue would be from that. In addition, increases in the fire district mill rate are skewed because of use of fund balance in 17-18. Now the final numbers. The budget for 17-18 was about 40.6 million. We're proposing 42.4. That's a change of about 1.7 million, or 4.29. Debt service is reduced by about 200,000, and the subtotal then is 3.4% appropriation increase. To that, you add capital improvements, which is pretty flat. It's only a 16,000 increase. That's 0.7%. Education is 2% increase, or $1.5 million. The total general fund increase then is $3 million, about $3 million, or 2.49% increase over last year. If you fold in the CCD, the TCD, and the Norwich Public Utilities, we have a $5.3 million budget of an increase of 2.3% totally. NPU, I did not make any changes to. That will come up during budget discussions with the City Council. Finally, and I know you can't read this, this is our upcoming, it's pretty small print, this is our upcoming schedule. We meet again tomorrow night at 6 p.m. when we'll have the volunteer fire departments and the Norwich Fire Department here. Then on Thursday the 5th, we'll have the public schools, public utilities, public works, human services, and recreation. Thursday the 12th, we'll have city clerk, city manager, mayor, human resources, emergency management, planning and neighborhood services, and then we'll also at 7:30 have the first budget public hearing, which is on the city manager's budget. April 16th, we'll have the police, Otis Library, and a regular council meeting then at 7 o'clock. Finally, on May 7th, the council would have a meeting to preliminary adopt the budget. On the 14th, there would be a public hearing based on the council's preliminary budget. And then finally, on June 4th, it's projected that the council would meet and set a budget adoption. Now, hopefully, if the state legislature does their job, we'll know what the final numbers are at that point. And that completes my presentation for this evening.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Next on the agenda is citizen comment on resolutions. I do have a sign-up sheet, and I will go through them. And anyone did not get a chance to sign up, you are most welcome to join us following this list. I ask everyone to please address the microphone clearly. Your name and address, please. The first person on the list is Tom Callahan.
He left.
He left. Okay, thank you. Next is Jason Morris.
Good evening, Council. My name is Jason Morris. I live at 145 Canterbury Turnpike. This is the first time I've had the honor of submitting public comment to you in the great city of Norwich. My name is Jason Morris, like I said. I'm a father of 3, and I moved to Norwich just 6 months ago. Sadly, my children are attending other school districts, so they won't be under your charge or the Board of Education's charge, but I care deeply about our schools all the same. I'm a self-identified public education advocate and sometimes activist, and I come to this meeting tonight curious. I had been following the School Facilities Review Committee development and was pleased to see it unanimously approved on March 19th. But what made me curious was the agenda for this meeting and the fact that, from what I've learned, there has been a nonpartisan tradition of giving the business of choosing a chair to that committee, or to the committees when they are appointed. So while I'm sure Mr. Betancourt and Mrs. Staley will serve our city well with their expertise and integrity, I'm curious why this committee isn't receiving the same treatment as others have for many years across several administrations. So this committee is very important to all our students' future, and it would be nice to have an explanation of why we're doing something different this time. To speak about the budget, I of course very much support the Board of Education's.
Excuse me. Tonight's meeting is not for that.
It couldn't be in response to the budget presentation we just had?
No, tonight is about the resolutions on the agenda. You're speaking to the potential appointment of a chair and vice chair of the School Facilities Committee. I would invite you to, again, take a look at the schedule for public hearing for the budget, because you are most welcome to come back then.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Gil Skillman, please.
Gil Skillman, 101 Broad Street in Norwich. Thank you. At its council meeting 2 weeks ago, right here, there was a very frank discussion of the issues relating to the renovation of the Reed and Hughes in collaboration with the Women's Institute. So obviously I'm speaking about resolution number 5. I found it very helpful, and I was grateful to be here for that conversation. And my understanding coming away from it was that the arguments, potentially the arguments against it, were basically threefold. 1, potential cost to the taxpayer. 2, risk involved. Alderman DeLucia, you in particular mentioned that issue. And 3rd, the prospect that there wouldn't be much in the way of revenues coming from the project if it were successfully renovated. But my understanding of the discussion taken as a whole, and this is just me putting it out there, as far as I can understand, we've been put in a difficult position, as Alderwoman Philbrick noted, and we can't avoid the position we're in. And the consequence, the upshot of that position, is that Norwich faces all of those issues: cost, risk, and revenues, which even if it doesn't vote for this resolution, so that there's really no escaping the sorts of trade-offs involved. So for instance, we have the cost of demolition if we chose to go that route. So since that's true, and since the prospect of at least getting some revenues is better than the surety of no revenues at all if there were just an empty lot, I think it would be a really sound investment. Speaking as a taxpayer of Norwich, I think it would be a really sound investment of taxpayer funds to go forward with this resolution. So I understand it. In fact, our skin in the game is even somewhat less thanks to the negotiations that have taken place in the last 2 weeks. So if anything, it seems even more compelling to me now than it did then. And therefore, for what it's worth, I'm staunchly in favor of resolution number 5. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sue Augustiniak.
Hi, Sue Augustiniak, 101 Broad Street. I'm also in support of Resolution 5, and I wanted to take my couple minutes up here to address a couple things that came up at last meeting. It was pointed out that, I believe it was by Alderman Gould, that the Wauregan, much as we like to point to it as what a wonderful restoration job, only pays $5,000 in property tax. And I thought about that. And certainly Gil and I pay a lot more than that in property taxes for our house annually. But the point is that because the Wauregan was done, there's a lot of people who live at the Wauregan, and they have personal property, and they pay taxes on that personal property, and they use utilities. And as we know, some of the utility revenues come back to the city. And because it's convenient, they go to the businesses that are here downtown, the convenience stores, the restaurants, and they help keep those businesses viable and open for everybody to enjoy and to make it a viable city. And those businesses pay taxes. And eventually the deal will be done where the taxes are forgiven, and then the Wauregan will pay its full share, whatever that full share is determined to be at that time. So in many ways, that deal was an investment in the future. And I think it was a very, sound investment in the future. And I would argue that what we're talking about here is also a sound investment in the future. As Gil's pointed out, we've got costs and risks anyway. But the other issue I think is important from last meeting that I want to address is somebody brought up the fact that maybe we should just wait and a better deal will come along. You know, that they put it in a way that they said they had faith that a better deal would come along rather than doing this. And I thought back a few years ago when the council put out a request for proposals on this building, on this building, and the only one that came back was Becker and Becker, and we didn't think it was good enough at that time, so we didn't take it. So now here we are, a few years down the road with a building that's in worse shape. So I would warn us against just hoping for the future. We have to be a little bit practical as well. And again, I would just support this investment. And I know I'm out of time. Do I have one more second to thank all of you who stayed in and listened to our voices last time? Because I think that's important.
Thank you. Heather Romansky.
I hate these glasses. Heather Romansky, 297 Scotland Road. Mayor Nystrom, City Manager Salamone, City Council members. 2 weeks ago, I stood before you and shared my concern on how the 2018 School Facilities Committee was being formed. Alderwoman Burnham, thank you for asking additional information during the discussion before voting occurred. Tonight, I stand before you and share my concern with the appointment of the chair and vice chair of that same committee. My concern originally was that the appointees, one council member and one Board of Education member, who are both subject to re-election, could potentially lead to a lack of continuity in leadership. Yesterday, I read in the Norwich Bulletin that the appointees were Mark Betancourt and Tricia Staley, names that differed from the posted agenda that I had reviewed late last week. So after a bit of research, because you know I'm a researcher, I was able to confirm that Mr. Betancourt and Mrs. Staley are the appointees. I'm confident, I want to be clear, I'm confident that Mark and Tricia will lead this committee using their experiences to make it inclusive, nonpartisan, and put the most strategic solution forward to our residents while protecting the educational needs of our students. However, it's still unclear to me why Mayor Nystrom feels that it's necessary to make this decision, and I worry about the precedent it sets going forward. So please take pause and consider that precedent when you vote. I'll close with some words that will sound familiar to any of you who were in attendance on March 26th. Committee members, council members, I'm asking that you ensure all stakeholders are included and engaged in this committee, that you lead your committee to do its due diligence, considering old and new ideas, and please ensure that every committee member at the table is heard and the committee does not serve the personal agenda of a few. Finally, that you will make decisions and recommendations that are not only best for the finances of our city, but support the educational needs of our youngest citizens. Thank you. I'm sure we'll meet again.
Thank you. Susan Massey, please.
Susan Massey, 1 Sachem Terrace. This afternoon, I was working in the Teal House. That's that big square house with the 4 chimneys up by NFA on Chelsea Parade. I was up on the 3rd floor fixing some curtains, and I was looking out at Chelsea Parade and imagining the regiments of soldiers that had been on the green over the centuries. We're so fortunate to have so much history here that has been preserved. People go out of their way to come here to see our architecture. So, yes, I think a vote in favor of resolution number 5 is the right vote because it preserves a prominent building in our downtown streetscape. And yes, a vote in favor will ultimately bring taxes into the city coffers, but mostly a vote in favor indicates a forward thinking, a vision for our city. And I thank those of you who have that vision, and I ask you to please vote yes in resolution number 5. Thank you.
Thank you. Dale Plummer, please.
Dale Plummer, 25 Broadway. I would like to add my voice to those who have spoken supporting resolution number 5. I think enough has been said. I don't need to say any more. But I would also like to speak to resolution number 8. As you know, I'm the city historian. One of my charges is to be concerned about the commemoration of events in the city's past, recognizing what our citizens have done. And we are now at the 100th anniversary of the First World War. And I think it is important that we recognize that. We had about 1,400 Norwich citizens serve in the war, probably more than that if you include civilian workers, perhaps as many as 2,000. And just like to read you a brief quote from Back Over There by Richard Rubin. It's a new book out. A few years ago, he interviewed the very last surviving World War I veterans. The youngest was 101. You may not know all that much about the First World War. You may not know that it generated current notions of ethnic and national identity throughout the world, and borders that still hold in Europe and Asia and the Middle East, and the civil rights movement in the United States, and the acceptance of gender equality throughout the Western world, and long-standing agricultural policies that determine what foods you can buy and how much you pay for them, and almost all of modern medicine and pretty much every means of modern transportation and the environmental movement. You may not know, in other words, that it generated the very world in which we, all of us, now live. But if you know nothing else about the First World War, you know that it generated a lot of cemeteries. There are 6 American cemeteries in France. One of our Norwich men, Robert O. Fletcher, for whom American Legion Post number 4 is named, is buried with 6,000 others in one of those 6 cemeteries. And I think it's important that we honor the sacrifice of these men and also women a century ago. Thank you.
Thank you. Ben Haith.
Good evening, councilors and people of Norwich and wherever you may be from. I told Dale earlier today, well, just before, I don't know what time it was, maybe 4 o'clock, that I was coming here this evening and that I would keep my mouth shut. So what am I doing standing up here? At this stage of my life, I have found that I've tried to listen to a spiritual element. I bring some experience to saving buildings from being razed when I was living in Boston. And my wife, along with some other neighbors in Roxbury, in Massachusetts, were able to go to housing court. And we were fortunate enough to have a judge named, Judge Dare. His first name, I don't want to mispronounce. And Judge Dare came out to the community and he took a tour of the buildings we were trying to save. And my wife reminds me of that, has told Dale about the experience. We saved many buildings. We lost count. The city was trying to raise them, as I said. So I just leave that message with you, and thank you for allowing me to speak this evening.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to speak under citizen comment on the resolutions listed? Yes, sir.
I didn't get here early enough to sign up. I'm Bill Champagne, president of the Norwich Historical Society. My address is 7 Northwest Corner Road, Preston. And the Norwich Historical Society sees the city spending $150,000 to stabilize the Reed and Hughes buildings as sending a very positive message. And I'd like to mention several other positive actions. They're not exactly related to the Reed and Hughes property directly, but very related in spirit. The Panema Mill, the restoration and reuse of the Panema Mill is going to bring new life to Taffville. It's a fantastic project. We are helping to do good, appropriate work on 2 former governors' houses in Norwich, William Buckingham, circa 1847, and Samuel Huntington, circa 1769. We're all seeing some good signs downtown, new businesses coming in, several buildings being rehabbed. And the Historical Society is part of the Plan of Conservation and Development Implementation Committee. And, you know, we're touting the heritage assets in Norwich, but it's interesting to hear of other assets that people are proud of, such as Mohegan Park, the Inland Wetlands Commission talking about the incredible waterways in Norwich and the eagles on the Thames River. And that committee mentioned branding and marketing, which you saw in an earlier slide. And then lastly, Regan Miner is the consultant to the Norwich Historical Society, and I've mentioned before that she won an award, statewide award. She's getting another one this coming Thursday. So we know that the ongoing Reed and Hughes saga has not been an easy one. We applaud the council for considering partnering with the Women's Institute to stabilize the Reed and Hughes buildings. Spending $150,000 to help stabilize the buildings sends a much more positive message than spending $800,000 to demolish them. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to join us? Mr. Bowie.
Rodney Boyd, 62 Roosevelt Avenue. Previous speakers have said everything that I would ever want to say. But let's treat the city of Norwich the same way that they would treat me as a landlord. We own the building. We can spend $800,000 to tear it down, or we can give $150,000 to an organization that will at least preserve it. We have enough holes down in the city of Norwich already. If you recall, we took a building down many, many years ago on Broadway. Nothing has ever been built there ever since. So, on one hand, we can spend up to $800,000. We've already allocated that much, $800,000. Or we spend $150,000. To me, it's a no-brainer, and it's the right thing to do, because was a building inspector to inspect it, and it was my building, I would be fined right out of the city. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, Darrell Wilson, 32nd Street. I'm here to speak about Resolution 9. For me, I've had an experience sitting on the police station committee that was formed after going out and failing. And for me, it's always been that the committee does its work. The committee chooses its leadership so that they can foster the vision. With this school facilities, we've already had one hiccup where it did not go through. And we're at a pivotal time in providing what's best and what's necessary for our students, facilities-wise. And this is not an issue to play political football with. It's not one where the council should decide who is the leadership. Both individuals in the resolution that are mentioned, both Mark Betancourt and Trish Staley, I have no problem that they would do an excellent job on the committee. But allow the committee to choose their leaders. Allow the committee to figure who they want as their leadership. Because when we choose, they're coming back to you with a report, with recommendations on how they want you to act. You telling them or setting the stage for them as who their leadership is going to be doesn't allow them to do their organizational work. So I would consider that you allow them, when they meet on Wednesday, to choose their leadership and vote no tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like this? Yes, please, Miss.
Good evening. I'm Nina Barkley, 3 Lathrop Lane, Norwich. To the different voices that have been raised tonight in support of the Reed and Hughes, I just want us to remember 20 veterans. 20 veterans. It's about people in our downtown. It's about helping people that often do not have good housing, good attention. And each of those people will have connections to others, will have a life to share with Norwich. And I just think it's important to articulate that a small life makes large changes in a city. And we should not, I want to honor the past, and I want us to honor the contributions that these people have made for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to join us? Citizen comment? Yes, please.
Good evening, Sheila Hayes, 382 Laurel Hill Avenue. I actually am going to attempt to address 3 of the resolutions. Number 1 is resolution number 5, the first one I should say, the Reed and Hughes building. I will state for the record, again, I am not speaking for or against the project. That's not why I'm approaching. According to the resolution, based on 2 weeks ago, it was the resolution, I believe, proposed $150,000 was a grant. In reading the new resolution at hand and whatever was negotiated, I'll be honest with you, I cannot really tell whether this is a loan, a mortgage, what is the start date, what is the end date, if it is a loan, if it is a mortgage. There is no information in there. So is it written to look like a loan mortgage? Is it really a grant? So I'm asking for clarification on that one. Resolution number 8 on the canon. I'm not speaking for or against the resolution. What is not clear in the resolution is once the money's raised through fundraising, through donations, however it's raised, how will it be determined how the money is spent? Who oversees it? Is it going to go through the city RFP process? Because it says Dale Plummer is raising the money. Is Dale a committee of one? Is there a committee to be established? Will it go through the city manager's office, since that's who he reports to? Again, there's a lot of information that's left out of that resolution. Resolution number 9. I'm going to come from a different point, very similar to some of the earlier comments, but my concern is that we've now added teachers who onto the school committee. They were not a part of, until the very end, they were not a part of the committee. Shouldn't they have a voice, and are we excluding that there's an opportunity that there's a member who is not an elected official that may be able to provide some strong leadership to this and bring a perspective from a voice that has been lacking? And that was part of the issue with the last the last school facility council. So again, I am asking, as the others, this is that the committee be allowed to hear from people who want to provide leadership to that committee. And I believe that there are some very good people that have a voice, and they may want to put their hat in the ring and let the committee decide who should lead that committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else under citizen comment? Please.
Good evening. Mark Betancourt, 129 Merchants Avenue in the fine village of Tattville. I guess so on two subjects tonight. Obviously, my name appears on a resolution tonight. While it would be my preference that the committee make the appointment, I've discussed this with Your Honor, I certainly accept any decision that the council makes, and am more than willing to serve. And as some of the speakers have said, to me, it's definitely a nonpartisan issue. It's something that we're all going to have to work together on and come and make some compromises and try to do the right thing for both the children, the educators, and the taxpayers of the city of Norwich. So, that will be my game plan going forward with that. And so, just so you know. On the second thing, the Reed and Hughes building, it's always been my contention that it's better to spend a little bit of money to try to save it if we can, rather than to spend the money to tear it down and leave a tooth in the a hole in the smile of downtown, I guess I'd have to say. So I think it's worth, is it a gamble to some extent? Sure. But I think it's worth the gamble. I would much rather see the building restored, and if we have any reasonable possibility of doing that, I think the council would be doing good to support that. And that's about as short as I get, folks, so as you know. So have a good night.
Thank you. Anyone else like to join us on this? Yes, Mr. Kraft.
Good evening, David Krebs, 47 Prospect Street. I have questions about Resolution 5, so I'm starting to oppose it. After reading the now therefore clause, the top line in Exhibit A put shivers down my spine because, as the last speaker said, you're rolling the dice for 150,000 taxpayer dollars. Do not endorse any language using a numerical description. Amend this exhibit and change first on that top line to only on the top line as an amendment. The national debt mushroomed after President Clinton terminated the Glass-Steagall Act, President, When he was governor in Arkansas, he bankrupted the savings and loan in his hometown. It wasn't the only savings and loan that bankrupted in that era. That loan development funds, let's call them by their true name, construction loans. For the infamous Whitewater scheme, it was based upon nickel-dime improvements to qualify for the next construction phase. The adage about $250,000 mortgage makes you the banker's slave, while a $1 million makes you another loan officer in the bank. Are you prepared to hear Women's Institute during the budget deliberations? Amend Exhibit A, top line, to replace first with only. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else under citizen comment? Yes, please.
Good evening, Tom Keeney, 12 Legend Court, Norwich, Connecticut. I'm just here to say that I want to support resolution number 5. What the city does not need is another hole in the ground downtown. We have enough vacant, empty buildings coming in from the east side, the YMCA, the Elks, coming in from the west side, the old Dunkin' Donuts and the Thayer building, I believe they call that, the Triangle building. So that is my opinion. I have served the city of Norwich as a volunteer for in excess of 24 years at the Norwich Arts Center, and we're doing our best to bring people downtown. I welcome 20 vets and what they can do and how they can show up at the Norwich Arts Center. And I would like to see more of you people there also. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else under citizen comment? Anyone else under citizen comment? Third time. Anyone else under citizen comment? Seeing no one else, I declare citizen comment closed, and I thank all of you for sharing your ideas and concerns. New business.
Resolution 1, relative to setting the first and second public hearings on the budget for fiscal year 2018-19.
Motion to bring it forward, please. Alderwoman Burnham, is there a second? Alderwoman Stacey Gould, is there discussion? Seeing none. Resolution 1 establishes that Thursday, April 12th, 2018 at 7:30 p.m. in these council chambers, the proposed budget will have its first public hearing, and that the second public hearing on the proposed budget for this fiscal year will be held on Monday, May 14th at 7:30 p.m. in the council chambers. No further discussion. All those in favor of Resolution 1? Unanimous vote 7-1-0.
Number 2, relative to a resolution to schedule a public hearing for proposed recaptured fund reallocations by the Community Development Block Grant.
Motion to bring it forward, please. Alderwoman Stacey Gould, second. Alderwoman Burnham. Is there discussion? Okay. What's that?
Is this one to schedule a public hearing also? Or are we voting on to spend the money?
No, you're voting to capture.
Okay, we said to schedule a public hearing.
To schedule a public hearing.
So, I think I read the wrong one as number 2.
Could we withdraw the first and second, please? Consider them withdrawn. Thank you.
So relative to a resolution, I don't know if it's to schedule a public hearing. It isn't.
No, this is recapture.
To recapture funds reallocated by the Community Development Block Grant.
Motion to bring it forward, please. Alderwoman Stacey Gould, second. Alderman Burnham. Is there discussion? No discussion. And for the benefit of the public, this recapture issue arose as the area of Taftville in the city of Norwich no longer became eligible for Community Development Block Grant investments. That was to the growth in the value of properties there. That's a good thing in the long run. The sum of money that's being recaptured is $432,607.69. All those in favor of the resolution? Unanimous. 7-0.
Number 3, relative to a resolution scheduling a public hearing April 16, 2018 on the Community Development Block Grant allocation recommendations.
Motion to bring it forward, please. President Pro Tem Nash, second Alderwoman Stacey Gould. Is there discussion? Seeing no discussion, again, that will be April 16th at 7:30 p.m. here in the chambers. All those in favor? Unanimous. 7-0.
Number 4, relative to dissolving the School Building Committee, Kelly Middle School.
Motion to bring it forward, please. Alderwoman Stacey Gould, second Alderman DeLucia. Is there discussion? Alderman DeLucia.
I would just like to say that I am an alum of Kelly Junior High, as it was called at the time. I also did my teaching internship there quite some time ago. I'm quite proud of what's happened to this building just as a citizen. This was a great investment on the city to improve a building that sorely needed it. I also applaud the addition of the Owens Auditorium as a public space. Again, a great use of city's funds to improve an asset in our school system. And lastly, I just want to thank the entire committee that worked for such a long time to bring this project to fruition and ultimately provided us with a building in our, I should say, our puzzle pieces of our school system that we can be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous. 7-0.
Number 5, relative to City Manager Salamone being and is authorized to sign an amendment to the agreement regarding the Women's Institute.
Motion to bring it forward, please. Alderwoman Stacey Gould, second is Alderman Browning. Is there discussion or questions? Alderman Burnham?
There we go. Just to address some of the public comment, can we go into an explanation as to the capacity of this $150,000 to address public comment? Is it a loan? Is it a mortgage? How is this structured as it differs from the last resolution?
I guess to explain it, the funding levels that come in, there's a $50,000 committed loan that's a non-recourse loan from Capital for Change Veterans Housing. Then through LISC, there's a $50,000 loan that's committed. Then the Connecticut Trust for Historic Preservation has a committed $150,000 loan. Then the fourth would be LISC, which has $450,000, of which $261 seems committed at this phase of the project. The City of Norwich would join at that level. So in effect, there will be some mortgages ahead of the City of Norwich's mortgage. The city would be a third mortgage. The largest will be the LISC mortgage, which probably is going to be the 50 ahead of us and then the 150. The city will be advancing its $150,000 with that $150,000 from LISC, so that we're later in the project. The initial monies will be spent, and then the city money and the LISC money will come in. The fancy phrase is pari passu, but it means at the same level. So they give $1, we give $1. In terms of security, though, the city will be a third mortgage, basically a non-recourse third mortgage. And the idea is that if during the process of stabilization it becomes apparent that the building cannot be stabilized, the city has limited the amount of money that is put into the process at that point up to $150,000. If the building is stabilized, then the Women's Institute has another 3 years to raise funding to complete the project, and 3 years, assuming they raise the funding, to finish the project. They would then, the city's mortgage would be paid off when the project is finished, assuming it gets to that level and stage. So the city has $150,000, up to $150,000 at risk at 1% interest, that if all goes well, it'll be paid off in about 7 years, let's say, 6 to 7 years. If it doesn't go well, and the Women's Institute, after the building is stabilized, determines that they cannot raise the funds for whatever reason, and they're not able to finish it, then the city's loan is a forgivable loan, if you want, and we will not get the money back. At that time, we won't own the building either, but if people walk away from the building, you know who ends up at the end. So that's kind of the way it's structured to be. So our money isn't absolutely last, but it's tied for last, I guess would be the easiest way to put it.
You still have the floor, Alderman Bruno?
Oh, I yield the floor.
Oh, thank you. Alderman Brown.
Reading this amendment to the development agreement, there were a number of things which were unclear about it. Have you already drafted the mortgage and note for this, what looks like a mortgage agreement?
No, because we're going to have a common distribution agreement with LISC down the road at the time that comes into fruition. So we haven't talked to them yet about what they want in the agreement. So none of the agreements have been drafted at this point. I have a couple questions here. The first is, when they are to pay, is it going to be a lump sum payment? Or are you going to spread it out over, say, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years? No, the city monies would be advanced during the stabilization phase. That's the purpose of them going in.
No, I mean, when they're paid off, because this is constructed as a loan which is secured by a mortgage.
They basically owe the debt at the conclusion. I won't call it a demand note, but it would be similar. If you reach the stage where the project has been developed, COs have been issued, then the balance is owed to the city.
So this is going to be secured by a mortgage with a demand feature in it.
It may or may not be a demand feature. We just simply say it's. I mean, there has been no discussion about whether that's payable in installments or the design at this point is that it all be due when the project's completed. So it isn't really a demand note. It's more of a note that has a date that right now is uncertain, but it has a reference in the development agreement as to when that event occurs, when the money becomes due.
My concern is when I came in this evening, I had a copy put at my place. I assume that's from you, and there was yet another modification, and it was unclear when at some time, this is not from you?
Initially, the proposal was that once they completed the financing phase, they would pay back the city. At the last minute, there was discussion about that. They asked to be able to pay it off at completion of the project, so that's why the amendment. That was, I think, done at the city clerk's office to make it clear to all of the aldermen what the change was, that final change.
Yeah, but is there even going to be in the mortgage a statement of how soon after the project is completed that they would be making the payment of $150,000?
Yeah, there'll be a debt. There'll be a definitive term as to when it becomes due in the mortgage, in the note too.
Okay.
Thank you. Further discussion, questions? Alderman DeLucia.
At our last meeting, Ms. Rogers spoke of that moment where the concerns and the skepticism melt away right when they cut the ribbon on the building. And I would just like to say I'm hopeful for our participation and the arrival of that moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Yes, Alderwoman Filbert, please.
Okay, just so that I understand, a vote in the affirmative this evening will allocate $150,000 to the Women's Institute with an interest rate per annum of 1%, which will be not compounded. Second of all, in the event that this project fails, for lack of a better word, the city will not get back its $150,000.
That's correct. Now, we say fails. If
they're unable to
if it cannot be stabilized,
right,
there'll be a cutoff at that point in time,
okay,
whether $150,000 is spent or $5,000 is spent. If it is determined that the building is
Which-
irreversible in terms of the
which then hypothetically puts us in a position where we will have to spend upwards of $950,000.
we'd have to spend whatever, assuming the building
Okay.
is so unstable,
So-
it can't be stabilized, it probably is going to have to be taken down. That's still,
I guess my question then is, why did we agree to a non-recourse to the developer?
I think largely because right now we own the building, and we're conveying it to them, and the impression I have from the council is there's no reason we wanted it back as a building that's stabilized, but that we have no project for. So if they can't raise the funds to do what they're going to do, the idea of recourse would be that if we wanted to go after them, first it's a nominee that's going to be named. The only asset of which they'll have is probably the structure. So if someone else can come in and finish the project, that's one thing, but LISC is probably in the best position to take title to it, assuming they want to take title to it. Because they are recourse.
And we know for sure that they have firm commitments from the other entities.
They have indicated, and we have copies of the documents that were signed, that they have firm commitments from the ones that were listed, the ones I mentioned earlier.
Okay, because there's a big difference between an approval letter from a banker
No.
and a commitment letter.
No, there's a commitment letter.
Okay.
The only one that I think is open-ended still at this point is the 1772 Foundation with the May decision. That's a $15,000 grant if it comes in.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further question or concerns? President Pro Tem Nash, please.
I just want to make a quick comment and go a little bit on Alderman DeLucia's remark. I too look forward to the day that we cut the ribbon on this building. We've been battling this issue for, from what I understand, over 25 years. I've only sat up here for 10 of those 25, and in the beginning of my terms, I was always for tear it down, let's put a little park in there or something like that. But becoming the liaison to the city, to the veterans, and realizing the plight of our veterans, especially our female veterans now, which is unprecedented in our country, the Women's Institute provides an opportunity to house some of these women and other veterans. And being on the Parking Commission a few years back, I did a study. I do pretty good at studies. And one of the things I called for was parking issues. And though we don't compare with New York, Boston, and Philadelphia, one of the conversations I had, which was pleasantly surprised that the New York person that was in charge of the parking there spent so much time on the phone with me. One of the things that they said generates business, they had talked to me about an example of a block between by Canal Street and Little Italy, where it was boarded up buildings and they were having homeless issues and gang problems and drug sales and stuff like that. And what they did was they readjusted their parking problem, their parking issues, and all of a sudden provided foot traffic down that street to get between the canal and Little Italy Street. And all of a sudden, obviously there's Starbucks across the street from Starbucks in New York, but all of a sudden there was a Starbucks, and then there was a little deli, and then there was a shoe store, and then there was a little fashionista store, and all of a sudden that street came to life. And one of the things that it also helped, it was on the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh floors of these buildings were apartments, and people started moving in. And this is what's going to help downtown. We can criticize it all we want, and we can make fun of it all we want. And I saw so many Facebook postings, and I've gotten emails and some phone calls telling me that downtown is dead, downtown is dead. We should be concentrating on other sections of our city. But that's like telling a patient who has a heart problem that don't worry about your heart, your liver's in great shape, we can work on that. We need to build our heart, and putting feet and people downtown Norwich, no matter what the social economical statue that they're at, is going to provide a resource for our city and rebuild our city and get it back to where it once was. So my comment, I guess, is just that we need to take a chance here. We own the building, for God's sake. How many of you own houses and don't put a roof on it, or build a shed up, or when the garage is falling, you just forget about it, don't worry about it, I don't need it, and let it fall down? We own this building, and we've come to the point where we have to put up or shut up. So here's the chance where we have to put up, and I'm going to be supporting this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further comment, concerns? Alderman Browning, second time.
I am in a situation where it would have been simpler in some ways if this had been a grant. And the reason why is because the guts of what is going to be determined in terms of repayment is stuck in a mortgage that has still not been drafted. And I can tell you that it's going to put a fair amount of pressure on the Women's Institute if at some point in the immediate future, after the project is finished, they're paying it at a 150 lump sum. And I've been trying to nail that down. I've been driving everyone up on the stage bonkers with my repeated questions, but still, I think it's important because at some point in the future, 6 years, 7 years from now, council is going to be back here and the Women's Institute might say, we can't make a lump sum payment. We would like to renegotiate. And are we even going to have a forgiveness provision in the mortgage? There's a lot of stuff that's not in this development agreement. It would have probably been better to have organized something where it's a 15 or 20-year interest payment. At least that way it doesn't start off with a really high cash call when repayment comes. And this doesn't even specify what the grace period is. I would have been happy with 6 months. The problem is I'm not the lawyer for the city. I can't just simply go in there and start redrawing agreements the way I would do it. But I'm going to vote for this, but I have some grave concerns because I just know 6, 7 years from now, there's going to be some issues with this based on what I have in my hand right now. And I hope I'm hoping against hope that the mortgage document will firm up these issues because that's what's done in the real world when you draft mortgage agreements. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Alderman Stacey Gould.
I too have been non-supportive of the Reed and Hughes. I thought we should tear the building down. So I look forward to now the stabilization of the building, and I hope that the Women's Institute is successful in being able to stabilize the building. I hope that our $150,000 investment will get them where they need to be so that they can further develop the building. And I look forward to whatever it's going to be. I think we've all heard you. $150,000 investment is a far less amount of money than $800,000 or maybe even more to tear the building down. And I certainly I hope it doesn't come to that. And just as I don't know, as an aside or also, as far as the development agreement that corporate counsel has drafted, I have the full faith and confidence that Mr. Driscoll and his office, legal staff, and Mr. Salamone will make sure that the city does what it needs to do, gives the money when they need to get it, and I have the full faith that they are always looking out for the best interests of the city in all matters that come before the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further questions? Alderwoman Philbrick, second.
I will be supporting this resolution tonight, but I also have grave considerations. I hope that the project goes forward, but I think that we are, I'll be interested to see how it all plays out. So I will support it.
Thank you. Any further concerns? All those in favor? Unanimous? 7-0.
Number 6, relative to a reappointment to the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Motion to bring it forward, please. Alderwoman Stacey Gould, second Alderman Burnham. Is there discussion? No discussion. The person that is being recommended for reappointment as a regular member is Ms. Dorothy Travers. All those in favor of the resolution? Unanimous.
Number 7, relative to a reappointment to the Personnel and Pension Board.
Motion to bring it forward, please. Alderman Stacey Gould, second Alderman Burnham. Is there discussion? No discussion. For the benefit of the public, the person being reappointed as a regular member is Ms. Sheila Hayes. All those in favor? Unanimous. Vote is 7-0.
Number 8, relative to the restoration of a memorial artillery piece.
Motion to bring it forward. President Pro Tem Nash, second Alderman Stacey Gould. Is there discussion? Alderman Nash.
I just wanted to point out that this restoration is in part with the 100th celebration of November 11th of the First World War. So I know that there was discussion on the details of who's on the committee, who's going to control monies, who's going to do that, and that'll be coming out shortly as to where that'll go. But again, this is in commemoration with the 100th anniversary of the armistice. And again, it's restoring this cannon that was captured, I believe, in the war back then. And I also would like to make a comment to the mayor, sir, that if it's possible, when the artillery piece is finally completed and the restoration is done and we're getting ready to place it, that the committee comes before the monument committee to make sure this is within the, we keep this within, I don't know the word I'm looking for, but the way we do everything here with monuments in the future. This is obviously a city project, and the cannon should be on city property, and therefore I think the monument committee should weigh on as to where and the appropriateness of where the cannon will be placed. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Alderman Browning.
Could I ask Dale Plummer to come up? I just have a couple questions.
Certainly.
Good evening,
Yes.
Mr. Plummer. This is a German Krupp gun, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And it was not used by any Allied military unit, correct?
No, it was captured and treated as a war trophy. In fact, the American Legion Fletcher, Robert O. Fletcher Post number 4, worked for a number of years to get it here. They had to petition the War Department. They finally received it, I think, in May 18th of 1926. So I think one of the reasons they were so interested is that artillery played such an important part in the war. 70% of the casualties on both sides were the result of artillery fire, shrapnel from artillery shells, and so forth. So they saw this as a powerful symbol of the war.
If I may follow up, it says here the City of Norwich expresses its full support. If you're unable to raise the money from private sources, will you be coming to the City of Norwich for money for this piece?
It's not our intention to do so, no.
Would you object if we amended the resolution to indicate that this would be only funded by private sources?
Of course not.
Okay. That's all the questions I have.
Alderman Philbrick.
I also have a couple of questions. So first of all, this is a German artillery?
Yes, it's a heavy field howitzer model 1902.
And where is it currently housed?
It's currently in a storage facility
Where?
on
Public Works.
Public
Clinton
Works.
Avenue, I think. Public Works. It's in
How
Public
long
Works.
has it been there?
Just moved.
It was just recently moved from outside.
From outside where?
It was in Mohegan Park.
Oh, okay. And please don't take this, Alderman Nash referred to this as a city project. Alderman Browning wants language that no city monies will be invested. I remember sitting in that third row over there a number of years ago when Barry Ellison was the Director of Public Works and the people were here from the Bell Committee. And I remember the question was raised, will this cost the city any money at all? And the answer was a resounding no. And we all know that once the Bell project that sits in the front of City Hall was done, that there were tens of thousands of city dollars involved. So having just been presented a budget by the city manager that, for the public, if you didn't notice, it's calling for a substantial increase in the mill rate. I will support this with the full intention that no city money will be used.
Alderman Filbert? You
Yes.
say?
I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Is there further? No, Alderman DeLucia.
I just have one question for Mr. Plummer. Is this not the piece that was at the point on Chelsea Parade, right next to the other
Yes,
monuments?
that's correct. And what happened was it's primarily of steel. It weighs 4,500 pounds, about 3 times what the Civil War cannon downtown weighs. A much more powerful weapon. And what happened was it has very few wooden components, but the wheels were of wood with a heavy steel rim. The wheels rotted out. It became unstable, and the city removed it from that site for public safety.
Thank you. I remember this piece. That's a neighborhood I grew up in, and so I'm only highlighting that to point out the fact that this has been a possession of the city of Norwich for probably most of my life, and I'm in my 5th decade. So this is not like a new thing that we found in Worcester, Mass. and had shipped here, and now, this is a piece that belongs to the city of Norwich and symbolizes a major conflict that this country was involved in. So while the discussion on whether or not there should be a change to the language can certainly be brought forward, I think that this is an honorable effort, and I thank you for spearheading it.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak for the first time?
I yield.
Oh, yes, Alderman Brown.
I would like to amend the last paragraph to add the sentence, "City monies will not be used for this project." Do I have a second?
I'll second it for discussion.
Thank you. Is there further comment on your amendment?
Yes, I believe that it could be a fairly expensive project. I believe it could be in the tens of thousands of dollars. And given that, I would prefer city money not be used for this. So if they want to raise money privately, that's fine with me.
Is there further question on the amendment as offered? Alderman DeLucia.
I would just like to say that we're not being asked for money at this point, and Alderwoman Philbrick's point is well taken about the bell, and that is exactly the reason why I don't want to handcuff either this council in the future or future councils that may sit up here after us on whether or not this effort is worth funding. There are too many what-ifs to say, we're out, do what you want, do what you need to do, but from this point forward, we say no. I'm not comfortable with forecasting that far and saying, gee, you need another $1,000, but our hands are tied and we can't help you out. So I'm just on that point alone, I do not like to handcuff myself or future council members with an amendment of this type at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further comment on the amendment? Alderman Stacey Gould.
I'm going to agree with Alderman DeLucia, and I would not support adding the language that no city funds be used. While I know that we're going to be in a tough budget year and all of that, but down the road, we don't know. Maybe they'll raise all the money and they won't need any city dollars. But I'd hate to see them raise $25,000 and they need $26,000 to get this project completed and put up back in Chelsea Parade. So I would not support any change right now. They're not asking for city funds right now. They're just asking us to acknowledge and support what the efforts that Dale and the veterans and all the other groups are putting in. So I don't think we need to, muddy the waters here just yet.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Alderman President Pro Tem Nash.
It says right in the resolution that the purpose is to raise funds through private solicitation to restore the field piece. And again, at the same time, showing support and expressing support will help with fundraising efforts. If Mr. Plummer went to solicitors and said, hey, I'm raising money to get a cannon, but the city's not supporting me on it, I think this is an expression of support to Mr. Plummer and his many efforts in the past that he's able to do for us. And again, he's not asking for money, and any council sitting here can simply say no if they do come to us and say, you know, we want a couple $1,000s. Any council up here can sit there and say, no, sorry, go find it elsewhere. So I really would like as well not to handcuff any city council sitting up here. We do that from time to time, and I can note examples after examples where we want to change something, but we made promises that tie our hands and we can't change things. So I wouldn't want to do that at this time.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? I will comment briefly. First, I'd like to announce that on April 16th, there'll be an informational at 7 o'clock in council chambers prior to that council meeting about this very subject and more about the Veterans Day program, because I do not want people to lose sight. This is not just about a cannon. This is about the city hosting a 100th anniversary of Armistice Day, i.e. Veterans Day, and in fact, paying respect to those people who served in Norwich who died in that conflict. And there were 47 citizens, 8 who were killed in action, 1 we know who the post at American Legion was named after. I think the resolution, as President Pro Tem Nash spoke to, limits it already with the reference to private solicitations. Comment was made earlier about the Bell project. There was a state grant that was secured by legislators, unbeknownst to the committee. They told us after they got it, which I really appreciated their efforts, but it would have been nice if it went through the committee. It did not. I know of no public dollars that went into that from Norwich, other than my own contribution, which I did give at the time, and other citizens did. The estimates are $30,000 to $35,000 at this time. We have been researching this, talking with people who handle restoration of such artifacts like this. It may not be achieved by Veterans Day. All in honesty, we may not reach that amount of money to restore it in time. That doesn't mean the effort will stop. It may follow the Veterans Day program. I don't want people to lose sight that this is about the Veterans Day program as well. And again, there'll be an informational, I'll share one last thing. One of the things we hope to do is identify surviving family members who still live in this city whose ancestors served in that conflict, and to acknowledge them as well as those who served. So there's many tasks waiting for people to step up and volunteer, and anyone in this audience who wants to help us, we welcome your efforts. Summary, I will be speaking against the amendment as it's offered. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment as offered?
As amended or?
As amended.
No, the amendment. We're on the amendment. Alderman Browning, 1. All those opposed? Motion fails. Vote 1 in favor, 6 against. Back to the resolution. Any further comment? Yes, Alderman Browning.
Because I believe that city monies will eventually be spent on this, I will be voting against it, and I think we can agree to disagree on this point.
Thank you, sir. Any further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution? Opposed? Motion is 6-1.
Number 9, relative to amending the 2018 School Facility Review Committee resolution by naming a chair and vice chair, adopted March 19, 2018.
Motion to bring it forward, please. Alderman Stacey Gould, is there a second? Alderman Burnham, is there discussion? Alderman Burnham.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to echo a lot of the public comment regarding those who are being recommended for appointment. I have no doubt in their abilities to lead this committee in a vision for our schools and our community. So just wanted to lay that down. I just had a couple of things to address with this. First, the amendment states that the council intended to appoint 2 members to serve as chair and vice chair respectively, but neglected to do so. It kind of implies that I forgot to do something or made a mistake when this was never brought to my attention, so it's a misrepresentation of my intentions. So I don't know if this is just standard language for something like this. Second of all, I couldn't, while it is under the purview of this council and the mayor to appoint leadership to committees, I haven't really found any situations where the council does appoint leadership, and it's typically handled at the organizational meeting for the purposes that were stated during public comment. So because I wasn't in on this and it's being laid at my feet as a mistake that I made, I just had a couple of questions. Is it the intention of this council to appoint leadership on all committees moving forward?
No, this is a singular issue before us.
Okay.
Speaking for myself, I only have one vote. But
So if this is, because it's not precedent, it hasn't been precedented most often in situations like this, and in terms of procedure. So I'm just curious as to why this committee at this time are we appointing leadership? Because I don't know anything about this, so.
Actually, this was contemplated at the time when the committee was structured 2 weeks ago. And we had discussed it the weekend before in caucus. That meeting went on at great length, and it was not offered at that time. I'll take responsibility for that. I should have remembered that we were going to do that. At that time, I was more concerned with other things. And so it wasn't offered, but it is being offered tonight.
So I won't be supporting it because I am worried about the precedent that it sets. And again, I forget who said it, but us dictating, by appointing people, perhaps dictating the vision of the organizational structure. And I think that most of our committees have been left to their devices, have chosen well, and I think that the people that are recommended are great recommendations. But again, this is not my mistake. I wasn't in the caucus, and I'm worried about the precedent, and unless this is a permanent move that this council wants to move forward, I don't understand why, because I'm not privy to the caucus, and that's totally fine. So I don't understand why this committee, it's important at this time, but no other committee. So I won't be supporting it.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Alderman Stacey Gould.
I will be supporting amended resolution number 9. I have the full faith and confidence in Mark Betancourt, who's a former city councilor, and Tricia Staley, who serves on the Board of Education, to lead this group openly, honestly, fairly. I think they're terrific choices. I look forward to serving with them on the School Facilities Review Committee, and I look forward to the work product that we're going to come up with for the city and our students.
Thank you. Is there further comment? Alderman DeLucia.
So it's no secret that how important the work of this committee is to me personally. I believe that this committee will have an impact that will be felt for the next 50 years. And I've made those thoughts available to anybody who would ask me, and even some people who didn't. I was looking for 3 things when in the conversations as we discussed this in small groups and so on. I was looking for a solid and experienced committee that will engage all stakeholders, as was mentioned earlier tonight. I also was very committed to the idea of continuity of the leadership by having a leader who was not an elected official, so that regardless of what happens in an election cycle, the vision continues to move forward. I too believe it is true that it has been past practice that the committees choose their own leadership. And I'm still not clear on why we're deviating on that. Okay? However, there's nothing in the charter that prohibits the action we're taking tonight. Matter of fact, if you default to Robert's rules we as a council are well within our purview and our providence. So I look at it, again, as I said last meeting, very pragmatic way. I got 2 of the 3 things that I deeply cared about. So I, too, have full faith and confidence in Mr. Betancourt and in Mrs. Staley as a member of this committee, along with Alderwoman Gould, excuse me, and the rest of the members who have stepped forward and said that they want to be part of this positive change that we're going to make in the way we do the business of education in the city. While it catches my attention and caused me to pause for a moment, I believe that we are making a good choice tonight, and I look forward to working with this committee and seeing this action move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? President Pro Tem Nash.
I would also like to offer my support to Mr. Betancourt and Mrs. Staley. They're both fine leaders and members of our community. They've served well our city. I've had the pleasure of serving with Mr. Betancourt and sat next to him for the first, I think, 6 years of my terms here, and he was a wealth of information. We worked together on budgets in the past at his house, and I really have great confidence in both of their abilities, and I think this is a good choice, though I am concerned that the committee didn't pick its own leadership, but I also am aware that sometimes you pick your leaders because of their history and their resumes and their abilities to serve our city. And I think this is extremely bipartisan selection. I think he'll work well. I don't think either of the 2, chair and vice chair, really stick that much to a Democrat-Republican type of atmosphere. I think they really care about the city, and I think these are excellent choices, and I think we'll be served quite well, and I look forward to their report.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Alderwoman Filbert.
I'm a sponsor of this resolution, but I will tell you in retrospect, if I was aware of the second paragraph, I may have raised some concerns. I, like Alderwoman Burnham, I'm not really pleased with the language where it says, whereas the council intended to appoint 2 members respectively, but neglected to do so. No.
It's honest.
We didn't neglect to do so. We forgot.
Sounds worse.
As I said, in a perfect world, I wouldn't have this second paragraph in there because it sounds like we were derelict in our duties, and I don't think that we had the opportunity to be necessarily derelict in our duty. But I do firmly believe that Mr. Betancourt and Mrs. Staley will be excellent representatives, and the bottom line is, it comes back to the council, be it this council or the next council, so they'll have to do all the work, but the council will make the decision eventually, so.
Thank you. Alderman Brown.
I will be voting with Alderman Burnham tonight on this. I think that Mark will do a fantastic job leading this committee, and I also think the world of his vice chair, but I share her reservations concerning this matter.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Okay, briefly, I look at this a couple of ways. One, I want to mention that one person was concerned about the lack of teachers. Teachers were sought to serve on this. Superintendent handled that side of it. Only one teacher volunteered to step up. We were looking for more, but only one stepped up, and that's just the way it is. We're actually reappointing, in some cases, the former chairman of the School Facilities Committee, because it was Mark Betancourt previously. And were it not for 2015 results, he would have continued in that role. I consider that a loss to that committee, personally. I have served with this gentleman as well, and I know him to be an outstanding individual who puts the needs of the city above all else, including the children in our school system. Remember, this is the second try. This isn't the first time. We're going back after the last one that was not supported last year for various reasons. I'm not going to repeat them. We will reuse the data that was gained. It's not lost data. But the fact of the matter is, the longer we draw this out, the less the results that we can gain, which are less dollars into physical upkeep and maintenance of buildings and more dollars available for student learning in the classroom. That's one of the main goals of this. We operate 15 physical plants across the city, run by the school board. We can't keep doing that. We just can't. Mark will do an outstanding job. Tricia Staley, who's a member of our Board of Education, did an outstanding job. And I strongly support this. Thank you. All those in favor of the resolution? All those opposed? Motion carries 5-2.
Number 10, relative to the sale of 130 Prospect Street.
Motion to bring it forward, please. Alderman Stacey Gould, second. Alderman Burnham. Is there discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous.
New business ordinances. Number 1, an ordinance relative to the appropriations for the City of Norwich and the City and Town Consolidated Districts of said city for fiscal year 2018-19.
Motion, please. This is to set the time and date to be posted on the city's website for our final resolution, which will actually be at the end of our process, but there is no time and date at this point.
Right.
We're just raising it, so. Alderman Stacey Gould, second. Alderman Joe DeLucia. And this, again, will be posted on the city's web page for everyone to review throughout the budget process. All those in favor? Oh, wait. Roll call. Roll, right? Ordinance.
There's no money.
There's no money.
There's no money.
You can do a resolution?
You do it by resolution, you ultimately adopt it. You've already set the schedule for
The
this.
schedule is set.
The schedule has been set for both ordinance
Yes.
1 and 2, so you're basically having the first hearing tonight. It's unique to the budget process.
Okay. We can do it by voice vote.
Yeah.
All those in favor? It's unanimous, 7-0.
Number 2, an ordinance concerning the tax levies on the list of October 1st, 2017.
Again, ordinance number 2, the times and dates will be posted on the city's web page. Motion to bring it forward, please. Alderman Stacey Gould, second. Alderman DeLucia. All those in favor? Unanimous, 7-0.
Number 3, an ordinance appropriating $675,000 for integrating and improving Norwich Public Schools and the City of Norwich administrative functions, and authorizing the issuance of $675,000 bonds of the city to meet said appropriation, and pending the issuance thereof of making of temporary borrowing for such purpose.
Okay, I'd ask for a motion to schedule a public hearing and second reading and action on April 16th, 2018 at 7:30 p.m., this being the first reading. May Alderman Burnham, is there a second? President Pro Tem Nash. All those in favor? Unanimous. 7-0.
Number 4, an ordinance appropriating $800,000 for 2018-2019 capital improvements for the Dodd Stadium project, and authorizing the issuance of $800,000 bonds of the city to meet said appropriation, and pending the issuance thereof, the making of temporary borrowing for such purpose.
Thank you. Motion to schedule a public hearing, second reading and action on April 16th, 2018 at 7:30 p.m., this being the first reading. President Pro Tem Nash, second. Alderman DeLucia. All those in favor? Unanimous. 7-0.
Motion to adjourn?
Second, President Pro Tem Nash. All those in favor of adjournment? Unanimous.